Episode 28 There is Always a Chance to Rise Above the Masses. Over the next few days, Natalie felt extremely sad, but she still started to look for a job. Because she had worked as an agent at an entertainment company in England, she set her sights on media companies for her job search this time around. When she was overseas, she had made quite a few people in the entertainment industry angry because of her unique ideas. But her resume and work experience were not bad, so it shouldn't be that difficult to find a job. The entertainment industry here needed talent like Natalie, but when she started looking for work, she began to suffer setback after setback. First, she sent her resume to several of the bigger companies. She was prepared to work hard now that she had returned home. However, after waiting for a few days, there was no response, or if there was, it was a rejection. She didn't think much of it at first, and continued to send out her resume. She started to worry when it kept getting rejected time and again, almost always for the same reason. They all said that she had no experience working in the country, so she wasn't a suitable candidate. What made her anxious was that she didn't have any friends in the industry here, so she thought there was something wrong with her. Eventually, after being rejected multiple times, she started to become suspicious. She was no longer new here, and although her resume wasn't the best, it was definitely up there. Her lack of experience could not be the reason behind all these rejections. There must be some other issue. At first, she could not decide what it could be, no matter how hard she thought about it. The Davidson family was in decline since they hadn't been doing great, and this was the reason why her father wanted a strong support pillar so that they would help him in his business. It was impossible for him to assert his influence to restrict her prospects like this. Then she suddenly thought of Nick. His family, the Barnards, was powerful. They were people the failing Davidson family could not contend with. If he wanted to force her into starvation, she who had nothing at all, it would be a piece of cake for him. Natalie suddenly understood. No matter how amazing her qualifications were, she would always be rejected. In other words, Tom and her stepsister were determined to practically drive her to death so that she would marry that old man, even if it meant asking Nick for help. She was on the verge of breaking down, and she had nowhere to vent her anger. Liam took his mother's hand and said with a firm expression, "Mommy, don't be unhappy. I will always be here with you." Seeing him so well behaved, Natalie broke into a rare smile. She squatted down and hugged him, feeling the softness of his body. Only then did she begin to feel at ease. She told herself that if only for Liam, she must survive. He was very proud of her. At that moment, her computer pinged. It was an email. She opened it in pleasant surprise. It was an invitation to an interview at a company. She had been accepted. But when she read the attached documents, a trace of disappointment flashed across her face. The company was Star Entertainment. It was not very big, and although it represented a lot of artists, it was on the verge of closing down. Although she hadn't been in the country, she still had a basic understanding of most of the companies operating here. She knew this company's situation, so she hadn't thought about applying there at first, and had chosen bigger places instead. But now this was the only company that had replied to her. Letting out a long sigh, she decided to go over and take a look. She had no choice but to face reality head-on. On the one hand, her father was forcing her into a corner. On the other hand, this was her last hope. She had no other choice, and she believed that with her expertise, she would make a comeback. In the CEO's office of the Claire Group, Bryce sat upright in his chair. Although he was hiding his mood, he couldn't hide his aura. He made people tremble unconsciously with fear. His assistant was reporting to him about the performance of the various companies under his control over the past 6 months. Although Bryce didn't have to worry about these things, he had always been meticulous when it came to his work. He couldn't tolerate even the slightest mistake. The assistant secretly glanced at his expression. Seeing that it was normal, he tried to sound out the situation. Mr. Clare, at the moment only Star Entertainment is losing money." Bryce still didn't show any emotion. He held up Star Entertainment's financial report and read it. The more he read, the darker his expression became. "If I remember correctly, I handed this company over to Howard to manage." He frowned. His assistant nodded, and did not dare to say anything else. He could only sigh helplessly in his heart. The Clare Group was all-encompassing. Star Entertainment was a subsidiary of the Clare Group, but it was failing spectacularly. Howard Clare was the son of Bryce's second uncle. He was a complete good-for-nothing and spent his days idling around and fraternizing with the young models and female celebrities in the company. He had destroyed Star Entertainment. Naturally, Bryce understood the truth. His face grew darker, and he threw the document to the side, coldly saying, "Have him come here immediately." The assistant obeyed Bryce's orders at once. Not long afterward, Howard Clare arrived at the office. His attitude was highlighted by his outfit. He was dressed head to toe in brand-name clothing, but it was rare for him to hide his usual arrogance in front of Bryce. Bryce, you were looking for me?" he asked carefully, sitting down on the couch. He didn't have much confidence in himself. Although he was used to being a big deal, he was still very afraid of his cousin. Bryce raised his eyebrows, sneered, and threw the financial report in front of him. "What has happened to Star Entertainment? It was fine when I handed it over to you. In just a half a year, the company has lost tens of millions of dollars. And there was also news that a female artist who signed a contract was forced to leave, all because of you." Although Bryce was used to not smiling, he was rarely this angry. His cold expression frightened Howard, who could only lower his head and remain silent. He knew he had done wrong. After a long while, he said with a pleading expression, "I know. I work hard every day, but what can I do? Good resources have been taken away by Golden Star, so Star Entertainment can only rely on their leftovers."